Okay, fine. Okay, so I'm assuming that you're all aware at this point that Pesach is over? Yes? Not if you know that Pesach is over. Is there anybody that hasn't had chametz yet? Chas v'shalom? Okay, yeah. All right, a little beer to celebrate. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that. All right, whatever. Anyway, yeah. Pesach is over, but Shavuos has not yet arrived. Right, so the question is, how do we understand what the status is of the time that we find ourselves in right now? Are we basically between dates, or is there more to it than that? And so the truth is, I would tell you, if you were paying attention at your Seder, we have a mitzvah that makes pretty clear that this is not just a time between dates, but actually that this is a time which really connects these two holidays together. So the question is, who can come up with the mitzvah that tells us this? There's an audio daily double. Think about it. What? Sefira? Well, Sefira wasn't part of the Seder. Sefira for sure is that connection, you're right. But what do we have at the Seder that told us? Okay, so the answer is basically the mitzvah of the 4 cups, right? Arba Kosas, which is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. We talked about this a little bit, but I'm gonna see if I can share my screen. I'm still a little bit new at this stuff, but here we go. Okay, let's try that. Does that do it? Yeah, that should do it. Can you guys see that? Okay, everybody see the sheet? So these are we're looking at the part of the psukim at number 1 over here. These are the psukim at the beginning of Parshas Vayera, right, where we get the 4 languages of Geula, right? So say to Bnei Yisrael that Ani Hashem v'hotseisi eschem mitachas sivlos Mitzrayim. I'm going to take you out from underneath the burdens of Mitzrayim. V'itzalti eschem me'avodasam. I'm going to save you from their enslavement. V'ga'alti eschem. I'm going to take you out of it. What does the word Geula mean? We all know what the word Geula means. It's a good place to go for shopping. But besides that, right, Ga'alti is I'm going to take you out. Geula means I'm taking you out of Egypt. I'm going to take you to be my people. There's even a 5th one. We don't talk about that one so much. I'm going to take you to Eretz Yisrael. Now, that first language of Hotseisi, we spoke about this a little bit, but Hotseisi basically is talking about the fact that in the depth of the Gullus, we actually forget who we are. The fact that we have any priorities outside of the labor that Mitzrayim puts upon us. And the first stage of getting out of that gullus is going to be that we recover a sense of knowing who we are. We're taking out from underneath the burdens of Egypt. We can see the light of day and we sort of remember who we are. Hitzalti is then what comes afterwards is I'm going to take it, then I'm getting you out of the work. None of this slavery anymore. Ga'alti, taking you out of Egypt. Lakachti. We'll come back to that. I'm going to take you to Eretz Yisrael. What you want to notice in these 4, 5 languages is, are they chronological? Anyone vote for chronology here? So I would say it's pretty clear that they are, right? And if you haven't, we have to know who we are before the Geula can begin. That's the first stage. While we're still in Mitzrayim, we get saved from the work. The Geula coming out from Egypt is the next thing after that. We come out, the labor ends, we have a year there going through the Makos, then we actually come out from Egypt. Hey, they say Schem El Ha'arz, I'm going to take you to the land. Clearly that comes after all of those, but if everything else is in alphabetical, is in chronological order, then Lakachti Eschem Li La'am is also taking you, I'm going to take you to be my people, is also in chronological order. We have to ask, what is it talking about? Because what happened immediately before that? What was the third language of Geula? It was Ga'alti, which means we finished the sentence, we left Mitzrayim. We're already out of Mitzrayim when we hit Geula. So what's Lakachti? It's clearly before we get to Eretz Yisrael, it's talking about coming to Har Sinai for Kabbalah Satorah. And you see that also very much in the Psukim at the very beginning of Parshas Yisro. Well, not at the very beginning, but in the beginning of Parshas Yisro, there's a whole back and forth between Kadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people, using Moshe Rabbeinu basically as the intermediary. How many of you ever heard of Henry Kissinger? Blast from the past. Ever heard of Henry Kissinger? Nice Jewish guy, whatever. So he did something called shuttle diplomacy. He was the one who actually brokered the peace deal between Israelis and the Egyptians, going back and forth. So Moshe Rabbeinu was basically doing this shuttle diplomacy between the Jewish people and the Kadosh Baruch Hu, negotiating. Right? When it begins over here, you have this pasuk over here. If you look where my cursor is, Im shemoa tishmu b'koli v'shemartem es brisi, v'aisem l'skula. If you're going to listen to me, and you're going to guard my bris, and then you will be a precious one for me from all the nations of the world, and you'll be for me a mamleches kohanim v'goy kadosh. That's what a Kadosh Baruch Hu is offering Klal Yisrael when they're standing at the base of Har Sinai after they first arrive at Har Sinai. Moshe Rabbeinu was given this message, Eila dvar masher shetidaber el bnei Yisrael. Make this offer to Klal Yisrael, and then in the next psukim, Moshe Rabbeinu returns back up to Har Sinai to tell the Kadosh Baruch Hu. They said yes, they want to do it. So Har Sinai begins with a whole negotiation between a Kadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people. Do you want this or not? And the answer is yes. It's in this period of time, not in that parsha. In this period of time, we come to say Nasa v'nishma, which is sort of the final agreement that we make from our side to enter into the relationship. But when we go back to this language over here of lakachti eschem li la'am, that's what it's talking about. It's talking about what happened at Har Sinai, that we became the people of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Can we go back to my be able to see you? Yeah. So then you have to ask the obvious question, which is, if lakachti eschem li la'am is actually talking about Har Sinai, why did the Rabbanan find it necessary to put it in to the Seder? Right? We have 4 cups for each one of these languages. Right? By the time you get to that last 4 cup, you really don't want it. There must be a really good reason why the Chachamim had to put it in there. We could have had the 3 languages. For that, if you looked at those psukim, you see that in a certain sense there were 5 languages of Geula, because they actually end with them coming into Eretz Yisrael. We don't talk about that 5th one. We didn't have to talk about the 4th one. We could have just had the 3 languages culminating in Galti, that I took you up from Egypt, which is really when the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim finishes. Why do they have to add this in? I think the obvious answer is that they're telling us that you have to understand that Pesach does not exist without Shavuos, right? It's an incomplete holiday, right? There's obviously something is being accomplished at that time, otherwise it wouldn't be an independent holiday. But the reality is that it's not a complete process on some level. This goes back to, I don't remember who was that said that that's really where Sefira to Omer comes in. The fact that immediately after the first day of Pesach, we begin the process of counting towards Kabbalah Satorah. So really what's coming out over here is we have to understand is that we have completed Pesach, and Pesach is clearly a stage, a significant stage in a process. But whatever the process is that Pesach is really all about, it's not finished yet. It doesn't finish until we get to Kabbalah Satorah and Har Sinai. And that'll be what Sefira's on. We're not talking about that yet. But when we want to understand what this in-between period of time is, it's really the connecting point between Pesach and Shavuos. And their Midrashim actually talk about it, that it really has a status almost, it would have had a status like Chol HaMoed. Same way that we have the intermediary days between the first day of Pesach and the last day of Pesach, first day of Sukkot, the last day of Sukkot. Really, Sukkot is even a better example, right? In a certain sense, in a very real sense, Shavuos is the last day of Pesach. Again, we can go into more detail about that at another time, but the main thing is you want to understand that where we are standing right now in the calendar, we haven't finished Pesach and we're waiting for Shavuos, but we're in a time that really connects Pesach to Shavuos, which is something that we need to do, because whatever Pesach is all about, it's not a completed thing, and it's incomplete until we get to Har Sinai and we get the Torah. So the question is, what are we talking about here? What was Pesach about? What was incomplete about it? And what happens on Shavuos that completes whatever it is that's going on over here? So I'm going to give you, we're going to start with a hint. So what do they both have in common? Where do they both overlap? And the obvious answer to that is food. Meaning what? Meaning both of these holidays give us a unique relationship with bread. On Pesach, uniquely, is the only time that we only eat bread which is unleavened, matzah. And Shavuos also has a unique relationship to bread. Anybody know the answer to this one? What happens on Pesach that's special about bread? You can unmute if you got an answer for me. So the answer is bread is brought as a carbon on the Mizbeach. It's the only time that bread, meaning bread with chametz in it, goes onto the altar. Normally, anytime you have a mincha, which is going up on the altar, it's matzah. It's not leavened bread. There's only one exception. There's another time when bread with chametz is used as a carbon. That's when you're bringing a carbon toda. But it doesn't go up on the, that's an individual carbon, and it doesn't go up on the Mizbeach. The only time of the year when bread with chametz in it goes up is on Shavuos, the Shtei Lechem. My phone is dying. Okay, fine. So good luck to you. I'm glad to leave in order to switch. Okay, fine. See you soon. Yeah, all right, whatever. Anyway, yeah, so we have bread. There seems to be, if we want to, it's, on some level, we can understand bread as the thing that links Pesach to Shavuos. We're trying to understand how Pesach is incomplete. It seems to have something to do with the fact that we eat matzah, and what completes it is that on Pesach, the Mizbeach eats chametz. So I'm just putting that out there, sort of think about, see, if you like symbolic by nature and you want something to hold in your minds, thinking Pesach matzah, Shavuos bread. And the question is, what, in some sense, matzah represents the incomplete achievement of what Pesach is about, and then that bread on the altar represents that coming to completion. We don't know what any of this is yet, but we'll get there. Okay. Ready, get set, go. Break. Questions? Stretch. Anybody want to take a little jog around the neighborhood? Can't do that. Just joking. Whatever. Anyway, yeah. Questions? Get going. We're ready. 1, 2, 3, forward. Okay. Less than half people are asleep at this point, so I continue. Yeah, just joking. Okay. Ready? Yeah. Okay, so Pesach, we know what Pesach is really all about because we spoke about this before Pesach, which would be reasonable, right? What we talked about there was that really the day which is marked as the actual Yetziah from Mitzrayim, certainly going to Rashi, is not the 15th when they physically left. It was on the 14th. What was unique about the 14th? That was the day everybody knows the answer to this one already. Go ahead, Shira, you know, right? Yeah. They brought the Korban Pesach, right? That was when they brought the Korban Pesach. Yetzias Mitzrayim is all about the Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach is the only Korban that's actually called Avoda. All Korbanos are Avoda, but the only one that's called Avoda is the Korban Pesach. The reason for that is through the Korban Pesach, which was the first offering of the Jewish people to Kadosh Baruch Hu, who does Avoda? It's the Eved. Through this Korban, we really initiate the relationship that we have with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, that we're the Eved, and what's the flip side of the Eved? Who does the Eved relate to? He relates to the Melech. In other words, we entered into the service of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. He became our Melech, and we became basically the servants of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. We spoke about the fact that that's hinted at the very beginning of the Seder, because we're told, just as we're starting the Sipur, we're told at the very beginning, we're told that the Chachamim that were Bnei Brak kept on talking about that story until they got to Kriyat Shema Shachris, right? When it was time to go be Makabel Ol Malchut Shamayim, then that's where the story leads to. That's what you're getting to, is that relationship of Malchus. We begin that's initiated on Pesach. Okay, so that's what Pesach is about. So if that's what Pesach is all about, and we're saying on some level what Pesach is about was incomplete, then we have to ask ourselves, well, if that's what it's about, then what was incomplete about it? And I think the answer to that is asking yourself, well, what is the relationship of king really all about? Which is the king, what does the king do? I mean, he doesn't just sit around by the pool, right, getting finger massages with daiquiris Well, he speaks with his ministers. That's not his purpose. What the king's all about is he's the one, he commands. He commands his people. That is the relationship between the melech and his people. He's the commander. What that really means is the whole point of the king is he unifies his people around a purpose. Somebody's talking. Who wants to speak? Someone came in? Yes? No? Keep going? Yeah. The king unifies he determines the purpose or the direction, the intent of his nation, what it should look like, what they're all about, and he commands to bring everybody together to unify them around moving towards that purpose, right? So king Eved, king people, the content of the relationship is all about commanding. HaKadosh Baruch, when we talk about HaKadosh Baruch Hu being the king, right, what that means is he created the world with a certain purpose, and commanding his people is the process of bringing the world to his purpose. He created the world with a purpose. There was an intention here. From Derech Hashem already, we learned that if we were looking for language to define what that purpose is really all about, it's about relationship. Because we created the world in order to have a relationship with Adam, specifically led by the Jewish people, right? So we have to understand, if we have commands, right, those commands are all about turning us into the people that are capable of having that relationship with him. What we're talking about is the mitzvot, right? The mitzvot, we know, Kadosh Baruch Hu does not command us mitzvot because he needs something done. He commands us in mitzvot because we become changed through doing those mitzvot. We become who we need to become in order to be in that relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So if we understand that Malchus, kingship, is all about a relationship, the relationship is a relationship mediated through commands, right? What were we missing as we left Egypt? We may have brought the Korban Pesach, and in doing that, effectively dedicated ourselves to the service of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, but what were we missing? The answer is that the relationship had no content because we had no commands. Who's speaking? Somebody's speaking. Hello? No?
Me. Is it?
Me.
No, me.
Hi, Batsheva, how are you?
No, are you saying that because when we left Egypt, we didn't have a king, so that's why we had to have, that's why Lakachti is part of it? Not Lakachti, what was it?
That's why we had to have what?
That's why Lakachti is part of it?
No, what I'm saying is we left Mitzrayim with a king because we brought the Korban Pesach. We dedicated ourselves to the service of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, but that was nothing more than a declaration of intention, because there's no content to that relationship yet because there are no commands. That's what's incomplete about Pesach. Pesach is all about entering into this relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. We spoke about this extensively before the Chag, right? That's what it's all about, right? The Rambam, when he talks about what we're doing when we're telling over the stories, we have to recognize all that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for us, the kindnesses he did for us, because that's the basis upon which we agree and enter into that relationship with him. But the point is, the relationship is a relationship of Malchus. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the king, he determines the purpose of creation. We're his people to serve as accomplishing that purpose. Ultimately, that purpose is a relationship with humanity. We need commands in order to develop ourselves so that we can play that role. Those are the mitzvot, but we don't have any mitzvot yet. That's what's incomplete about it. We have effectively we have the idea of Malchus, but we don't have any content of it because we don't have any mitzvahs. That's what's incomplete. Okay, yeah. So now the obvious question is, if that's what's missing, then why don't we just get them in Mitzrayim, right? Why do we have them? Or for that matter, if we're not going to get, for any reason I'm not getting in Mitzrayim, why are we schlepping through the desert for 50 days before we get it? That was the whole point is Malchus. There's no real Malchus without the mitzvahs. So give us mitzvahs already. I mean, there were a couple, but clearly the real bulk of the relationship is waiting until we get to Har Sinai. And the question is why? Why do we need to wait? Why do we need to wait these 50 days? What has to change? So I think the obvious answer is, right, how many of you have ever tried to lift a lulav? those things are mamish heavy. You see, some of these guys have like aravas that are the size of Arzei Lebanon. Like, so we clearly, some of those Taimani esrogim, you ever seen them? Right? You need to be a bodybuilder to be able to lift one of those things. So we clearly need to build ourselves up to be able to to lift up the esrog. So it's like what does every good Jew spend the days before Sukkot doing? We're all in the gym, pumping iron to prepare ourselves to be able to lift our lulav and esrog. So clearly, to prepare ourselves for this, we need to build ourselves up. Or then again, maybe not, right? The greatest esrog is not the biggest esrog, right? And the truth of the matter is, not so physically difficult to do the mitzvahs. What are the mitzvahs really all about? The mitzvahs are all about developing ourselves spiritually. That's what the mitzvahs are. Through physical actions, we're developing ourselves spiritually. And what that means is, in order to be able to get mitzvahs, we need to be capable of changing ourselves spiritually through physical acts. Right? I asked that question, why is it that we have to wait so long to get the mitzvahs? Why is there a 50-day march from Mitzrayim to Sinai? So we've spoken about this before. We've spoken about it numerous times. Whenever there is time involved, Kadosh Baruch Hu does not need time. He stands outside of time. If there's time involved, it's because we need time, meaning that there's a process. There's a development that we need to achieve, right? And human beings achieve those things, need time in order to do that. Those 50 days mean we need a certain period of time in order to develop the way we need to be able to develop in order to get those mitzvahs. Those mitzvahs have a purpose to develop us spiritually so that we can have a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So clearly what's going on is we need this period of time to develop ourselves to be capable of acting physically and through that changing spiritually. Right?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How did they know how to develop themselves if they didn't have the mitzvah to tell them?
What they're doing as they're getting from Mitzrayim to Har Sinai is they're not doing the mitzvahs, they're not developing themselves spiritually, they're developing the capability of changing themselves spiritually through doing the mitzvahs. That's the point I'm trying to make. I mean, the mitzvahs are, when you think about it, the mitzvahs are something unbelievable. I'm going to do an action in the physical world. I'm going to change myself spiritually. That's a big deal. That's not a little deal. That's a big deal, right? And in order to be able to do that, there needs to be some level of integration between my physical, or appropriate integration between my physical being and my spiritual being. In a certain sense, I need to become a unified self, if you want to put it that way, such that I can act physically and change myself spiritually. What we're understanding is the whole idea of needing to wait, not just wait, but we have to travel through the desert for these 50 days until we were able to get those mitzvahs. We had to come to the point where the mitzvahs were purposeful for us. We had to be able to use them. We had to be able to benefit from them. The only way to be able to do that is if we achieve the ability to act physically, change spiritually, which requires us to integrate these two aspects of ourselves together. And that's really how we understand what we're trying to achieve during this period of time. We're not going to talk about it now, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it later. This is where we'll get into the whole idea of that Sefira Omer is a time of tikkun of midot. We'll talk about that. We're not going to do that later, but we'll get that later. But coming back to what we asked at the very beginning, I said if I'm trying to understand what it means to get from Pesach to Shavuos, from Mitzrayim to Har Sinai, we could look at bread, the change in our relationship to bread as we move from Mitzrayim to Har Sinai. Bread is it makes sense that it would be relevant to us because bread, as well as being the staff of life, is also used in Tanakh as a metaphor for a human being, right? Why would you use bread as a metaphor for a human being? So it's very simple. What are the ingredients for creating a human being? You need two things. Pepsi Zero.
a physical body and a spiritual soul.
Oh, you're so religious, but exactly right. Correct. I need a body and I need a neshama, right? That's what a human being is all about. And the reason why bread functions nicely as a metaphor for a human being is because bread has a body and a neshama. Well, not exactly, but what does bread have? Go ahead, Dina, you're saying it.
Calories.
What? Go ahead, Chana. What do you have? What do you say? Calories. Okay, we're not talking about that, right? We sent you home because we figured you weren't coming close enough to 770, so we wanted to speed up the process by getting you home early to get some good meals. Whatever. Anyway, but the bottom line is what bread has got is it's got flour and water, right? Which one is going to be the spiritual? One's going to be the physical. So
Water
flour.
is the spiritual.
What? Who's speaking?
Water is the spiritual.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because water is spiritual except when it's not, and flour, right? Why is water represent spirituality? Basically, water is a unified thing, right? Water is, you take 2 cups of water, you put them in the same glass, you have not 2 cups in one glass, you have 1 cup. Water merges into a single unity. That's one of the reasons why we look at water as being symbolic of the spiritual, whereas the physical world is really characterized by the fact that everything is broken off one from the next thing. Spiritual, Hashem Echad. Physical, everything broken down into its component parts. Flour is made up of little tiny particles, each separate from the other, which is very different from water, which all unifies into a single entity. So bread is representative of the human being because you have these 2 ingredients which symbolically represent those 2 elements or dimensions of our humanity. And if we think about it that way, what kind of bread do we have on Pesach? Matza. What kind of bread do we have on Shavuos? Bread. Which one of the 2 represents integration?
Shavuot's bread.
Exactly. Why?
Because it's risen.
Because what?
It's risen.
Yeah, but how does that, because the whole point is what allows bread to rise is the water and the flour interact with one another. The way matzah, you keep the chametz away from the matzah is the whole idea is by baking it so quickly, you don't give any time for the water and the flour to interact. Given time, they will interact, they'll meld together, and what comes out from that melding together is chametz. Right? That chametz represents the coming together of that water and flour, the physical and spiritual. And effectively what matzah represents a human being where we've frozen the body in a pure form and the neshama in a pure form so that they don't interact. Why is that significant? So let's think of let's go for another question, right? Chametz, why is it that we don't have chametz in our matzah on Pesach? What does the chametz represent? Right? What does the chametz represent?
Our ego?
Pardon me?
Our ego?
Ego, Yitzhar, whatever form you want to give it, right? But that's what, and why does that? Why does it make sense that it would represent that? So think in the following terms. Everybody know what a gerbil is? Like a slightly oversized guinea pig? A guinea pig on steroids. Yeah. How many have ever seen a gerbil sin? None of you, because you don't know what a gerbil is really. Okay, whatever.
I have
Anyway.
a guinea pig right in front of me. I could show
Close
everyone.
enough. Okay, did you ever see your guinea pig sin? Who's got the guinea pig? Who spoke up?
Here, I'll show everyone.
There. Oh yeah, we have to see the guinea pig. Let's see. This was unplanned, ladies. I just want you to know that. Look at that. An angel.
It's so cute.
Just look at that. An angel could not possibly do anything wrong, right?
Rabbi,
So,
do you
how
not
often
see
have
the
you seen
beady eye?
Molly's finger.
Right?
He's only bit one
Sometimes you might
person.
not
Calm
do things
down.
You don't like, but they don't sin. They just do what they're supposed to do. And the reason why they do what they're supposed to do is because they can't think. Right? How many of you have ever seen an angel sin? What? Ever seen an angel sin?
has sinned. None of us have seen an angel.
No,
Pardon
the
me?
Nephilim. The Nephilim in Miss Brenner's class.
Okay, whatever. Ms. Brenner's all doing Kabbalah stuff. We're normal. We're just simple Jews here. We're taking the simple approach. Angels don't sin. Why do angels not sin? The answer is because what?
They don't have Bechira?
But why do they not have Bechira? Because they
They're not
see
humans?
too much. They see too much. It's obvious. They see too much. They couldn't possibly go again. They'd realize they were doing something crazy if they sinned. They see too much. And the reason why your guinea pig does not sin is because your guinea pig doesn't see anything. It's not thinking at all, right? What's the only being capable of sinning? And I wasn't referring to you specifically, Chana Eli. But but the bottom line is, right, human beings can do it. Why? Because we can see, but we don't see too much. Our physical being blocks us from seeing too much, but our spiritual being gives us the capability of seeing and understanding and thinking and making choices. A human being can sin because these two interact, our physical and our spiritual. We spoke about this when we spoke about, I spoke to you about the relationship between Purim and Yom Kippur, right? Yom Kippur is supposed to be a day when effectively we don't sin. Why? Because in a certain sense, we stop being human. How do we stop being human? Because we become purely spiritual. We leave our body behind, right? All the symbolism of Yom Kippur is I leave my physical being behind and I become a neshama perfect. And we talked about Purim also. Ideally, Purim is the mirror image of Yom Kippur in the sense that through the drinking adalo yada, you become physical without spiritual. Just like your guinea pig never does anything wrong. It's designed to do what it does exactly what it's supposed to do, without any intelligence or whatsoever. You just do what you're supposed to do. You can't sin. Purim, and Yom Kippur are both days where we purify ourselves by separating out, so that you can't have the interaction between the neshama and the goof. In a certain sense, the whole idea is on Pesach, the way that we get out of Egypt, coming directly from a situation of being slaves, we become ideal human beings with no Yetzer Hara, with no evil inclination. We do it by freezing the two aspects of ourselves so they can't interact. We become physical beings and spiritual beings without the physical being able to interfere with the spiritual. Effectively, all the miracles that we saw on Pesach froze any influence of our physical being over our choices. And we left Mitzrayim, in a certain sense, perfect and purified, but only by artificially separating out the physical and the spiritual, which is nice, but we need to get to a very, very different kind of a state in order to serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu, do what we need to do, which is to do the mitzvahs, to develop ourselves. We need to bring these two things that have been artificially separated, we need to bring them back together. And that's effectively symbolized by the bread that we're bringing up on the altar. What that means is the whole period of time, as we're marching from Mitzrayim towards Kabbalah Satzara, what we're really doing is we're in the process of bringing these two aspects of ourselves together, integrating them in such a way that they interact, they affect one another, but they affect one another in a positive sense, in the sense that I'll be able to act as a physical being and change and develop myself spiritually, right? So when we first sort of start out, like I said, this is gonna segue very nicely into a discussion about how Sefira Omer, this period of time from Pesach to Shavuos, is a time of midot development, because that's exactly what midot development is really all about. We're not going to go into that today, but just sort of gives you sort of signs of upcoming attractions. That's what we're going to be moving towards. But basically, I want to leave you with a kind of like a vision of your humanity, of yourself, which is something we can develop maybe over the coming weeks, but something to sort of think about. What it is to be a human being is to connect these two dimensions together, spiritual and physical. That's really what our humanity is all about. If you think about it, we live in a physical world. That physical world, as a physical world, is utterly meaningless. The only way you can make the physical world meaningful is by connecting it to its spiritual root and giving it meaning. The only being capable of doing that is us, because we have these two dimensions to our personality, and what it is that we're all about is by bringing those two together, where each one influences the other, so that each one becomes sort of a vessel and an instrument for the other one sort of becoming what it needs to become. But when this intermediate period that we're in right now, having completed Pesach, but not yet having come to Shavuos, is a period of time where we're trying to develop that integration in a way that it becomes a positive thing, not a negative thing. So we're capable of getting those commands from the king, doing what we need to do, which is to develop ourselves as spiritual beings. But as an introduction to that, we have to purify ourselves in a way that these two aspects of ourselves can interact. Okay, that's step one. Questions, comments? Oh, very good. Almost all of you stayed awake.
Yeah, I have a question.
Unbelievable. What? Questions?
I have a question.
What's step 2?
Who's speaking? Wait, who spoke first? Go ahead. Who said they had a
Gabby.
question? Gabby. Hi, Gabby. Yeah, go ahead. What do you want to ask?
Hi. So you said
Hi.
the physical world is utterly meaningless unless we work on ourselves and connect ourselves spiritually?
That physical matter has no meaning unto itself. The only one that can attach meaning to physical matter is a human being, because a human being is the one who has that neshama connected to a goof, right? Making the world a meaningful place is another way of understanding what it is that we're doing and why we're the only ones that can do it, because we have both of these elements. We connect, we're the ones the physical world left to itself is meaningless. It goes on and does what it's supposed to do, but there's nothing, it can't actualize or express any larger spiritual value. The only ones who can impose that meaning onto the world, the human being, because we have this thing called the neshama connected to our goof. So through our actions, we can do actions that express meaning. We can bring meaning to the world. Molly, you want to ask something?
Okay, thank you.
So if the physical world in itself is meaningless, but the spiritual world in itself isn't meaningless, so why is it the only reason we couldn't stay in that spiritual state for the next 50 days and so on is because like that's not human beings' purpose?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, the whole point is we're supposed to be making decisions using our free will. We talked extensively about that in Derek Hashem. You can only have that by bringing these two things together, right? The purpose of man is actually to complete himself, so that he can have this relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. We weren't created perfect. We're created with the opportunity to determine and create ourselves. In doing that, the reason why we can relate to Kadosh Baruch Hu is because in doing that, we emulate a Kadosh Baruch Hu. We mimic him uniquely in the fact that we make choices. We're creative. We're creating ourselves. That's the job.
thank you.
Okay, ladies, you were all very, very patient. Kol hakavod to you all. Listen, any suggestions? I'm new to this medium. I'm happy to get suggestions from any of you. If you do, I can't really, I can't improve my haircut so much. So that's at least at this stage in the calendar. But other than that, presentation, more show and tell. I mean, Molly thankfully presented us with a guinea pig just when we needed it. I can try to arrange for other exotic animals for other classes that we give, if that would be helpful. Yeah, Chana Ellie's enthusiastic about that. Okay, but whatever. Anyway, yeah, Elsklar also wants that. Okay, fine. I'll see what I can rent. It turns out that pets can get coronavirus also, so they're being protected by the state. So I'm not sure what I can get hold of, but did you guys know that the tigers in the Brooklyn Zoo got the virus? Did you all know about that? All right, whatever. So no tigers, whatever. All right, anyway, they're in quarantine.